Welcome to the Author to Authority podcast. And today I have with me Emerald Mills. And she is an amazing business strategist, network coordinator, and public health professional with almost 2 decades cumulative experience. She's the founder and lead facilitator of Diverse Dining, an events education organization whose mission is to cultivate courage, compassion, and connection through meaningful conversations centered around diverse foods and cultural exploration. And Diverse Dining strives to establish and maintain interpersonal and interprofessional relationships among persons of varying cultural, economic, ethnic, political, racial, and social backgrounds. Diverse Dining, which Emerald is now involved with full-time, has been prominently featured on Dear MKE, on Milwaukee, the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, Spectrum One, Fox 6, Visit Milwaukee, podcast, and many other mediums. So welcome to the show, Emerald.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So Emerald, today we're actually going to be talking about how to overcome rejection. And this is such an important topic, especially when it comes to being a professional, an entrepreneur, a coach. You have to learn how to deal with rejection and see it for what it truly is. If you don't, then you actually never build a business because you can never get over what you think of as rejection. So we're going to look at that today. But just before we get into that topic, which I'm excited, Emerald, why don't you introduce yourself and tell the audience about yourself?
Yeah, so hello, everyone. I think you gave me such a great introduction. I'm like, what piece of that do I want to pull? But my name is Emerald Mills. Of course, I'm the founder of an organization called Diverse Dining. I'm located in the city of Milwaukee. I started this organization as a result of a birthday party in the city that I live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It's been plagued as the most segregated city in the United States. And so I started Diverse Dining as a solution to that problem to help bring people of different cultures and backgrounds together. So I like to say some things about me is I'm a problem solver. I like to, analyze situations and problems and come up with solutions as best as I can to solve them instead of just talking about them or being afraid or being frustrated. However, to be willing to do that, I definitely had to overcome a lot of rejection. But about me, I also am a caretaker and mom of 3 children that I have custody of. So I have custody of my sister's 3 children and have had them for the last 6 years. So I'm a Insta mom, but I've been a mom for the last 6 years. Trying to think some other things. And yeah, I'm a full-time entrepreneur and have a background in public health, which I did for the last 20 years prior to starting entrepreneurship. And that's just some other things outside of what you shared.
So what led you to starting Diverse Dining?
Well, as I kind of referenced before, just really the issues here in the city, you hear about it a lot, and I think even more so now with them planning to have the DNC here this year, as you hear a lot that it's the most segregated city in Milwaukee, but you also, living here, you feel that. Mm-hmm. You can tell that people are typically disconnected to other people and really the word that people a lot of times use is cliquey, but really kind of comfortable in their own spaces and in their own groups. And I moved here in 1997, but I moved from a small town, which was, somewhat diverse. And that just wasn't my way of life and being. Mm-hmm. I kind of was more comfortable exploring and connecting and collaborating with various different people for whatever the reason. So it was something, the segregation here could be felt for me. And especially with getting my sister's children, I thought about wanting to create a space that I would want to be suitable for them to be able to live in. Adding to that, I would say just working in public health for 20 years and still constantly hearing that the needle is, barely moving, causes a different level of frustration and a desire to want to figure out what the root cause is of the work not changing or the statistics not changing and do something about that.
Yeah, it was quite an interesting experience. I was born and raised in Toronto, which is one of probably the most multicultural cities in the world. I'm sure there's others, but, Toronto's high up on that list. It's said that almost every country is represented in Toronto from the world. So, it's you're so used to seeing people of different races, different colors, like just everything. And I remember, I think it was about 2010, we went to Milwaukee as a family for a conference, and we were driving through Milwaukee, and it was such a strange sensation for us because you'd go to one part of Milwaukee and there was sort of like one ethnic group, and that's all that you saw. And then you kind of like crossed a street and all of a sudden it was like a different ethnic group. And we found it, well, it was weird for us, but it was just kind of like, it was so unusual for us. And so, yeah, that really made an impression on me when I traveled to Milwaukee. So how does diverse dining try to solve that issue?
So one of the things that we do is we partner with local establishments of all different ethnic backgrounds to host our conversations in those establishments. So make sure we get people out to a variety of different neighborhoods and trying a variety of different cuisines. And that's for one aspect of the business where I host the monthly conversations that are open to the public. So that's one way that we get people to take actual action in desegregating the city. The other thing is that we, always gather a group of a variety of different cultures and backgrounds. And I create like custom icebreakers, activities, and discussion questions that really focus on people's personal stories to get them to talk to each other, to share their experiences in a way, as one of my customers said, is tasty and tasteful. So people are, people leave the experience really saying that they were able to be authentic, that they didn't have to code switch, that they were able to be vulnerable, which in my opinion, there just aren't enough or a lot of spaces in the city of Milwaukee where people of different cultures and backgrounds can come together without the power dynamic and explore each other and have meaningful conversation.
That is wonderful, and I think it's such an incredible initiative, and I think I can just see it just continuing to grow and grow as more people become aware of it and take advantage of it. So we're going to talk about rejection today, and so what I'm going to do is, I know you've come prepared today to talk about rejection, and you've got some different, I think you got 5 A's that you're going to discuss with us today. So I'm going to let you loose for a bit to share what you've prepared, and then afterwards we'll talk about it.
Yes. So I'm in the process of writing a book called Uprooting Rejection, and what I'm talking about on the other half, the beginning part of the book, is me just really sharing my own personal journey, which I think is really makes people more comfortable to be able to share a lot of the things that we often feel but don't say, or struggle with but don't share with anybody those struggles. I'm opening myself up in this soon coming book to share my own personal journey with rejection and how I use the 5 A's, which are awareness, acceptance, accountability, authenticity, and action to fight rejection and to continually fight rejection on a day-to-day basis, because I think rejection is a thing that never really like goes away. Like, you know, we get to a point where we say we never have to deal with rejection anymore. Unfortunately, it's here with us. You know, awareness is the first A that I talk about in the book. And I really just think that one of the things that I say is that, you know, we really can't solve a problem that we're not aware of, or we really can't address something that we're not aware of. And by nature, the way that rejection works is I think that it hides under something else, or it blends or meshes with some other issue that we may struggle with. And it could be, you know, it could be overeating, it could be control, it could be, it can be, you know, a fear of something or a phobia of something. And I think that a lot of times at the base of it is rejection, and which is, you know, some behavior or some situation that happened to us that we maybe have, whether it was internally or audibly, made a decision that we weren't going to allow ourselves to be put back into that position. And so for me, there were several points, but I remember going through some struggles as a child, and feeling like I didn't have the support that I felt like I should have had from my parents, and saying to myself, I'm never going to allow another human being to disappoint me in that way. So I'm going to build a certain amount of protection to not allow that hurt to happen again.
And do you think that too, that, you know, rejection really attacks your self-worth and how you see yourself?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that rejection definitely attacks your self-worth and how you see yourself. And then it also is like it's almost like a virus where it attaches itself to something else, and then it like destroys that thing. And then it, you know, once that grows, and it attaches itself to something else, and it grows that. So it kind of, it not only attacks the, you know, where you feel worthy or your self-worth, but it keeps multiplying, and it keeps coming back and saying, you know, if you develop a little bit of confidence in one area, or if you feel strong at one point, it still brings that doubt and that fear, or that not enough, you know, pep talk of like you could have did better, or you could have did more, to any conversation or to anything, even the things that you may be winning at, you know, publicly. So absolutely. So awareness is the first thing that I talk about. I kind of gave an example of how, my personal journey where I started to become aware of, like, this isn't really a, you know, X, Y, and Z problem. This is a rejection problem. This is a mindset that I have adopted about myself, that is causing these other behaviors versus these other behaviors being the problem. The second part is acceptance. And I think when you talk about, self-worth, but even just, you know, just in any type of self-worth, I think the acceptance part comes in, right? Like, of just like, this is where I'm at currently. This is what's going on. This thing happened to me. I feel like a lot of times, especially when you look at, I think this happens a lot of times when you look at people who have become publicly successful, I guess is the best way to put it, or publicly in the limelight, where, you know, you almost get a sense of perfection from them, as if they've never been through anything, which we all know is not realistic.
Yes.
So the opposite of that is like, just because you recognize that you're dealing with something, or even that you get strength to overcome it, you don't have to not acknowledge it, or you don't have to not accept that it was a part of your journey or your process. And so that acceptance piece is very important, because I think, you know, all of us we want a hero, but we also want a hero to be somewhat relevant, right? Like, we want a person that we look to say, oh, we can model that to be a person that we also can identify as human. You know, a hero without the humanism aspect to them is, you know, it's just a fictitious character. It's not a real person that we can relate to. So I think that acceptance, and the authenticity piece, that, you know, that is the next A, kind of go hand in hand, but is the part where it's important, where we're able to, share our journeys, share what we're going through, or what we've been through, so that people can see, that we're vulnerable and that we're real, but that there's hope for them to be able to overcome what they may be struggling with. That's what I was talking about. And when I go into the authenticity, I like to use an example, because in my book, I start talking about how I never thought that I would be called to do this kind of work, because I think one of the things that we do well with rejection is we learn how to study other people. So we know how to figure out what to do and what not to do, what to say and what not to say, what to share and what not to share. And so I feel like I was really good throughout life with relationships, but I wasn't always good with being authentic. So people thought, and people used to think that I was their best friend, but I knew they weren't best friend because I wasn't sharing the pieces of me where I wasn't sharing the vulnerable aspects of me or the things about me where I needed help. I may have been a great helper, or I may have been a great doer, or I may have been a great listener, but I wasn't a great sharer. I wasn't great at being authentic and being real, I guess, for another term. I never would have told or thought that I was not real. People I wasn't making up things, but I wasn't sharing things also. So
it was a one-sided relationship. You gave a lot, but you weren't allowing people in to give to you.
Very, very well said. So, yes, that's yeah. And so in that, discovering through my own process that was not really me being authentic. One of the stories I shared in my book, and I won't share too much, but a couple years ago, I was engaged to be married. And I ended up calling off my wedding about 2 weeks before.
Oh,
but
wow.
prior to me calling off my wedding, I remember when I was struggling with the decision to get married, and I felt like, how usually you can bounce things off of somebody, and who knows you, there's always wedding jitters and fears and things like that. But you can I'm gonna talk to my mom, or I'm gonna talk to a friend that knows me, and they'll say, oh, you're just getting nervous. And I remember when I was making a decision to call it off or whatever, that I could not identify, though I had a very rich group of people that surrounded me, I couldn't identify one person that I felt like knew me well enough, knew my thoughts, my attitudes, and my intentions well enough to be able to give me sound advice without using their own judgment or their own experience or their own thoughts with helping me with the decision. And that was for me really a aha moment that I needed to work on building more authenticity in my relationships, because nobody really knew me at the level where I desired, or really knew that it was important for them to know me. And so the last A, there's two more A's. The other one is accountability, which again, it that ties into what I just talked about with authenticity. But the accountability is just so important. And when you think about your relationships and kind of posing what I just said in the question of who do you have around you that really knows, really knows who you are and knows knows you well enough to be able to challenge your decision making or challenge your thoughts or intentions. Because a lot of times, we have people around us, but do we really have people that we can be accountable to in that aspect? So that is the fourth essential A that I believe is important. And the last one is action, and that is just doing. I think rejection is really one of the rejection's real benefits is that it, for itself, I guess, is that it really paralyzes. And it really will cause you to, isolate yourself. It'll cause you to, think but not do. It'll cause you to stay inside your own thoughts and fears, and almost torment yourself if no action is taken. And so one of the phrases that Joyce Meyer, who I follow and listen to sometimes says is do it afraid. The last A is really just about action, and it's about, picturing or identifying like what is the thing that I would do if this fear wasn't here or this rejection wasn't here, and beginning to, almost force yourself into taking some of those action steps, which are all easier if you have a certain level of awareness and acceptance, yes, accountability, and authenticity in it. But at some point you have to move into the doing phase of your process and not just, letting it be thoughts that are swirling around in your head.
Mm. And I want to go back to acceptance for a minute, because all of those A's are really powerful, and of course you can't accept what you aren't aware of. But when I think of acceptance, when it comes to rejection, once you recognize that the rejection is there, acceptance is kind of like saying, you know what, I realize that this thing happened to me, or this person said this, or this person did that. And I accept that it happened, but I also choose to accept the fact that I do not have to let it affect me. And I think acceptance is a conscious choice to recognize what happened. Like, you don't pretend that it didn't happen, but you get to that place where you're like, okay, it happened, but I can choose how I react to it.
Yeah. That's so true. I think that's so true. Like I said, when I started, you're never going to get to a point where you're not rejected. And if you are in relationships where there's no rejection, I challenge the fact of it being a real relationship. There's no way to live without rejection. It's going to happen, whether it's imagine, like you just have that feeling in your own head, or it's an outward, like, no, you are going to, you're going to experience that. And so, beyond the acceptance of, hey, I had that experience, or hey, I'm feeling this way, you absolutely have to say, yeah, but I don't have to make it, I don't have to make it as big of a situation as it is. Like, I don't have to imagine it the absolute worst. And I won't use the coronavirus as too much of an example, but I think that, even just what's happening with what's going on in our country right now is a really good example. Like, yes, this is what's going on and this is what has happened, but do we have to imagine it as the absolute worst of what could happen? Like, can we think about this thing, or can we attack and approach this thing in a way that's still sensible and that is still, allows people to live? Or do we have to go all the way to the extreme and, to doomsday? So
here's the thing. If you look statistically, more people in either of our two countries have died from heart attacks in the last few days than the total number of people who have died from the coronavirus in our two countries.
And the flu.
and just the regular flu. Yeah. Like, I think there's a powerful amount of fear that is just taking over people. And, I think it's really sad when you live your life in fear. There's a lot more I can say, but I'm not going to.
Right. I was thinking to myself the whole time you're talking, like, let me not go down this path. We will totally move from the conversation of this book into something else.
I think, you were talking about, how you get to the point where, rejection isn't as big. And I do think you can hit a point in life where you don't let rejection in anymore. I've kind of hit that stage in life where, rejection comes at me, but I recognize it now. And I'm like, yeah, you're there. I forgive the person, but I don't need to take it in anymore. I don't need to accept it or allow it into my life. So I don't think you ever get to a point where rejection doesn't try to come at you. But I do think you can hit a point when you recognize it easily and you don't let it in.
I Totally agree. And I think for me, as well, I think I'm stronger sometimes at fighting the rejection that others bring than I am fighting the rejection that I bring.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like I don't really, I started Diverse 9 and after having it in my head for 10 years and not moving, part of the reason I didn't, start my organization sooner is because of the comment sections around the world. Like, people's comment sections when issues go on, like I read like some of the nasty and some of the mean things that people say. And I'm like, oh my God, like it would paralyze me because I would be like, oh, surely, like I'm human and like I'm flawed. And so like, I don't want people exposing my flaws or like saying mean stuff to me about, like that wasn't the only reason, but like those crippling thoughts and those, fearful, like people are mean and nasty. Like who wants to willingly open themselves up to something like that? Definitely played a part in me taking so long to get started. But after I'm, now that I moved, past the ideas phase of thinking about it to doing, it's much harder now for me to like listen to somebody tell me I can't or tell me, you shouldn't or something like that. Like I listen sometimes, and then, I keep moving forward. Yeah. But there are thoughts and there are, conversations within my own head sometimes that arise. And sometimes I'll let the music play longer than I should. So that is definitely something that is, when I think about it being a continual process, I definitely think it's more so our internal wiring than it is, what people bring at you. And that really essentially is the whole battle. It's more than half the battle is, I know that I can versus what you think I can do. Because
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And we're going to transition, but one thing you said about not doing something because of the negative voices, and so many times as we transition into talking about your book, people don't write books because they're afraid of what people are going to say. And so I've got some really good news for you, and I got some really bad news for you. The good news is if you write a book and you do it well, I mean, you put the work into it. I mean, not a piece of junk, but if you put your work into your book, there will be people who will love it, appreciate it, find help and support from it. Unfortunately, the bad news is that even if you could write a perfect book, which you can't, but even if you could, there are still going to be people who are going to hate the book and hate you. So, you know what? If we went by that, nobody would ever write a book. So when I talk to people, I say, write the book to the people who are going to love it and don't care about the rest.
Yeah, I've definitely heard that and identifying your perfect reader. And that is, I think, in my introduction, I definitely say like, this book is for, and this book may not be for. So, kind of a safeguard for people who may be in the introduction and, and a safeguard for me. Like not only is my book not for everyone, I'm not for everyone. You know what I mean? And that's why we have a variety and a, diverse group of people that we can select from, and I think that is another thing of acceptance. That was a big acceptance that I had to have, is that, everybody is not going to like what you're doing, even though you are doing it with the purest of intentions from the purest of heart. Somebody's going to say you're doing it because of this. Somebody's going to feel like you should have did this. And, that is life. Still sometimes challenging, but yeah, that there is a certain level of acceptance of understanding this is not for everybody. Is key, I think, and something that I constantly have to remind myself when I encounter people who want to be very vocal and letting me know that it wasn't for them.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I say, well, thank you for letting me know. God bless you. Have a good day. So talk a little bit. Your book's not quite done yet, but you are well on the way to finishing it. So tell us a little bit more about what your writing journey has been like.
So, my writing journey has really been intense for me because I took on the idea to do the book in 90 days in a very short amount of time. I believe I have a gift. I believe I probably have a gift as a writer, but it was not one that I was exercising. In fact, and I believe that a lot of my struggles with writing were, are related to what I'm writing about and why I'm writing about it. So it's kind of like, prescribing and taking your own medicine while providing a level of medicine for yourself. Writing for me, which in and of itself, I think provides a certain level of accountability for you and a certain level of reference point. It just is a struggle for me because it was a struggle for me because it causes you to relive and reflect on things that a lot of times I think when we go through things, we have an awareness when we're going through them. Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of times our goal, instead of just, to be able to overcome or learn a lesson, is like to get over it. Mm-hmm. And so like in getting over a challenge or a struggle, we don't want to think about it. Like if there was a really hard or tough time that you've endured in life, like most people don't sit around and like, oh, like I remember when I couldn't eat anything, you know what I mean? Like we like nobody sits and thinks about that. And so in the uncovering process or in the writing process for me, it was like, I really got to sit and reflect. I really got to sit and relive almost, in some cases, some of these situations that didn't make me feel good. Mm-hmm. And so it was tough. My writing, it is tough. I'll say that because I'm very close to the end, but I'm not done yet. So it has been a very challenging process. I think what you just said about the perfect reader in mind, having a perfect reader in mind, has been helping me to keep going, and knowing that like I'm not for everybody, but I'm for somebody. Like somebody needs and somebody's waiting on what I have to say. Somebody is living this exact or very similar experience that I'm living right now. And so like this information that I'm working on contains, the medicine, like I said, or some sense sort of the antidote to somebody else's struggle or problem. So for me, that has been the motivation. And I think being able to figure out or identify or even like, so for me, I started to discover the perfect reader by sharing certain aspects like I'm doing with you, with other people. And then them saying, oh my God, I need that. Or, oh my God, I can't wait till your book gets finished. And then I'm like, oh God, I got to finish.
Yes, it does bring the accountability. And you have different groups helping you. But I'm so glad that you were able to use some of the resources that I have to be able to help you to work on this book. And before you begin a book, having that perfect reader in mind makes the writing process easier, and it also keeps you accountable. And you're doing the right thing. You're out there, you're talking to people about this book, you're sharing with them. And as you do, you're already finding those perfect readers who are resonating with your message that they need to hear. So kudos to you. You're doing the right actions.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, we're going to be closing in a minute or so. So Emerald, please tell people how they can connect with you to find out more about you, about your book, and about what you do.
So the best way to connect with me would be either on my website, the number 4 diversedining.com. Mm-hmm. There's a way that you can send a message on my website to reach out to me if you have questions, if you want to utilize my services, because we also provide these dinner training conversations for companies and organizations. You can email me at emerald@4diversedining or info@4diversedining.com. And then you can follow me on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram on 4diversedining.com. So just remember the number 4 and then diverse dining.
Well, thank you so much, Emerald. What a great show. So as we're closing, I just want you to quickly give us the 5 A's again so people can have them in their minds as we close up another episode of the Author to Authority podcast.
Yes. So just look for the book, Uprooting Rejection. Believing it's going to be done by April, end of April. The 5 A's that we cover in the book are awareness, acceptance, accountability, authenticity, and action.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Emerald, for being on the show. This has been Emerald Mills and Kim Thompson-Pinder on the Author to Authority podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite app. If you're enjoying these shows, subscribe. We are on every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and we have lots of different amazing experts to share with you about their lives, their expertise, and their writing journey. So have a great day, everyone, and we will see you on the next episode. Bye now.
Bye. Thanks so much, Kim. See you later.